Over to you, Lindy.
Thank you. So welcome again to everybody. I finished the last lecture with a quote from Helena Blavatsky. So today, whilst preparing, I decided to open Alchemy and the Secret Doctrine randomly at a page. And I will just read with my second slide. Page 94. The Secret Doctrine teaches that during Pralaya, the periodic cessation of all cosmic activity, the deity slumbers, wrapped in its robes, the noumenon of undifferentiated cosmic matter, called by the Hindus Mila Prakriti, the root of nature. The doctrine thus holds to a trinity during manifestation, the one eternal principle, root substance, and the universe, or the spirit, soul, and body of cosmos. A cosmogenical theory, to become complete and comprehensive, has to start with the primordial substance of an intellectual and divine nature. Cosmic ideation and cosmic substance are the two facets of the one absolute existence. Matter in its esoteric meaning is eternal and is the physical basis on which the universal mind builds its ideations. The fundamental truths of nature were universal in antiquity, and Platonists and Pythagoreans, Egyptians, Hindus, and Kabbalists all taught that the universe had evolved out of a primordial substance. In every cosmogony, it opens the cycle of manifestation, for it is the vehicle of every possible phenomenon, physical, mental, or psychic. There is but one universal element, unborn and undying, and all the rest are but differentiated aspects and transformations of that one. So this is one of the cards that have evolved in terms of the sleeping goddess. If you see, all the flowers around her have opened, except for one, which still remains closed. And so we come to the hymn. I have put the first, let's say, aspect of it, where at the beginning, Homer says, I begin to sing of rich-haired Demeter, awful goddess, and it is spelled as AWFUL. So I have never read it like that. I always put it as awe, full of awe, of her and her trim-ankled daughter, whom Athonios wrapped away, given to him by all-seeing Zeus, the loud thunderer. So we have the upper realms, which is where Demeter sets off. We have the middle world, which is the earth, where Persephone is walking, and the underworld, which is the shadow land. In the first image, we have a young maiden going towards a door, seeking, in the second picture, abundance, and third, having to go through the book, which I call the golden book, that represents perhaps the life cycle of the soul and what is necessary and what is written and what has to do with free will. The earthly life is a path. There needs to be an intention. So the intention was very, very clear when I began my work, because actually touching on the Eleusinian mysteries, I felt that I was moving into a space that was sacred, that nobody had spoken about, and therefore I needed to treat it with the utmost respect and not to go beyond boundaries. The intention was to investigate and to go as deeply as possible into the path and to look for the internal flower that I spoke about last week. We also have here the Grail, which we can go back into antiquity and see as, again, a search for something that is beyond what we see, but what we begin to know as we feel it, which is the union. The journey, how I place the cards that I have developed, is as a flower. There are 7 cards. So we start off on the left with the figure who looks up at the moon, but looks up in terms of the feminine and the masculine, the prayer sent up, or the intention to have the open door, going down into the understanding of Persephone and Demeter, which goes into the depth. At the bottom, the idea of Demeter and the mysticism involved between the 3, which emerges as abundance through nature. So I have put here a circle around the first image, and I have adapted it in a way to Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, because Demeter hears the call. She hears the call of her daughter. She needs to come down to earth. And if we read in the hymn, we notice that it is a period of mourning when she leaves the upper realms. It is a moving into a heavier vibration. She meets with Helios, who is the masculine. This is how I have interpreted it through the work of the PhD and through my participants, which you will see as we go along. And then she meets the feminine Hecate, which is the moon. Now I have to say that these 2 aspects of the sun and the moon, the masculine and the feminine, emerged much later. It did not emerge at the beginning. I also did not ask my participants to read the hymn, so they were not aware of what was going to happen. They just decided to take part in my research. They knew that it was looking at myth, and they knew that it had to do with Persephone and Demeter, but that was all. She then begins the search. She needs to find her daughter, and her story begins where she talks about having left Crete and having escaped from slavery that would have been the situation because the pirates had captured her. She was seeking sanctuary, and this is the sanctuary that she moves towards together with her mortal aspect, because by now she has fully donned mortality in terms of hiding her goddess self. And this is where she meets the daughters of Metaneira, who is the queen. The daughters of Metaneira suggest to her, because she asks for work in general, and they suggest to her that she comes to meet the queen. Now, there is an interesting aspect when she does meet the queen, that they offer her to partake in the wine. The wine belonged, I have taken or interpreted, to the Dionysian mysteries, but that was a different kind of initiation than the one being proposed through the hymn for Demeter. She asks for a special communion. Now, certain scholars have suggested that perhaps she took a certain drug, if I can call it that, if it was a certain, let's say, herb, I don't take it as that. When I was reading it, I took it to be a sacrament and a communion, and that is how I read it to the participants. They come to an agreement that she is going to look after Demophon, and she is going to bring Demophon into eternal life through the initiation. It's an interesting multi-leveled journey, because here we know that Queen Metaneira doubts the validity of whatever is going on, and through her doubt she spies on Demeter, and this is where Demeter feels that she has been betrayed by the mortals, because this emerges when she feels filled with anger and calls the mortals witless, because she would have protected him. She would have made sure that there were no spells on him, that nothing negative would touch him, and that she would have given him eternal life. But because of the doubt, this immediately led to her withdrawal, when she asks for nothing but holds back the food, which I've taken as a symbolic aspect. And there are different interventions from the upper realm. Iris comes, there are a number of deities who come and ask her to let go of her anger, her frustration, her hurt, and her betrayal. And she asks them to build a temple, which I have taken to be her self-acknowledgement. And this brings flow. When the temple has been built, here is flow. And whereas she wanted to give Demophon this gift is now given to Triptolemus. There is an acceptance and a free will to a certain extent of Persephone, who is within the underworld. She eats of the seeds, and we have Hermes who intervenes. This is an interesting aspect, or it presented itself as an interesting aspect to me, because she obviously was not happy in the underworld. However, she is given the status of queen. Hermes is the messenger god, and as the messenger god, there is a kind of deeper meaning behind it that I have taken, in terms of once we begin the journey into the inner work that is required to be done, something shifts, something changes, and there we find Persephone rising up to the middle world, where she meets with her mother. Then Persephone repeats her story to her mother in terms of the pain that she has gone through. There is acceptance, reconciliation, and a birth. Prior to reading the hymn, I did not try to analyze it. I just took it in a very humble way of reading it, and then basically reading it across 5 sessions with lyre music playing in the background. And at that time, when I began, I chose not to look at it and not to kind of like analyze it. The analysis came through the process over the 4-year period, and it is still evolving, because every time I read it, there is something else that I recognize in terms of an internal process, because that is the entire idea behind the therapeutic keys, and to how we can use myth in terms of working on the self. So the upper realm gives us archetypal forces. There is a certain destiny that supposedly comes through the path, what the soul has to learn, but there is also a certain amount of free will, because we always have a choice, as long as there is something driving us from within to either follow the path or not, to either work at it or not, to see the good and the positive or not. So the pictures here symbolize the tree that is in bloom on the right side, but on the left side, it is without flower, without blooming, which represents to me the lower unconscious, where, according to Jung, the shadow aspects are. We can take it similarly to mean the shadow aspects of the underworld, but we can also look at Plato's cave and recognize that as long as there are people looking at shadows that they believe to be a reality, if they turned, there would be a recognition that behind them was a fire and normal people walking back and forth. And of course, coming out of the cave, I've taken to be coming out of the box into a unknown space where the search is for something deeper. The search is for finding, through communication, a twin aspect of self, because in my work, I think that we all trigger each other, or we all represent aspects of the other. When we're focused on the outside, we don't do the inner work of looking at whatever we do not like on the outside, which is actually within. That lends its movement, let's say, to the more divine aspect of innocence. That's why I have the two children with their rainbow wings. And it's usually the masculine and the feminine, which, through understanding what work we have to do on the inner realm with the shadow aspects of the self, this leads to a certain awakening. So when I did my PhD and in the book, I decided to create this vision of participants, apart from having drawn and painted the cards. So PD says, last night I had a dream that I visited a temple. It was very familiar. I went to this place with a woman who I was friends with, but I don't know her. It was like visiting again, something too familiar. And I told her, look at the tap and the basin from ancient times. There were two aspects that emerged: a very angry person, plus a very calm and balanced person in everyday life. The shadow aspect was the angry aspect that emerged. So we see that her epiphanies were a projected birth of a daughter in the future. We are here to evolve, and meeting a burglar with a metal pipe. When she described meeting the burglar with a metal pipe, she said that she woke up in the middle of the night and heard a noise downstairs. She then promptly crept out of her bedroom. Her husband was sleeping, and her children were sleeping as well on the top floor of the house. It was 3 floors. She went to the staircase and she saw a burglar coming up with a metal pipe. And she said, at that moment, I felt that my entire demeanor changed, and out came an aspect of me that said to the burglar, if you do not turn around now and leave this house, I will kill you with my bare hands. And she said, the burglar turned and left. And in the morning, when they looked at the cameras, there were 3 burglars, but they all left. So she felt that this was a very important aspect of herself that had emerged. The symbols that she saw were the following. It was an eagle. It was a aspect of the Virgin. There was a flame that was purple, a flower, a seated Buddha, and a cat. Her dreams were where she saw her father as priest, her son escaping up a narrow passage on a ship. There was a figure in green staring through the glass, a dream of spitting out teeth, and visiting a temple. So at the top, we see how she saw Persephone as blonde and gorgeous, standing in purple fire, full of joy and life, very pretty, and how she saw Demeter as an old lady, someone bitter and tough, a mother losing power to her daughter, and that she was chthonic. In session 1, she saw images of her daughter and an eagle, images of her mother and a grandmother, and she wondered who is mother, who is daughter. In session 2, there were healers at the baths and a man with a shield dressed in red. In session 3, she saw that there is a big difference in herself. She found herself alone on a raft and then flying on an eagle. The daughter became the mother, and the mother became the daughter, and she began to ask, who am I? In session 4, she was in a temple looking down, mother and daughter, the stalk that began to grow and reached the light to experience unity, and she saw a white cat. So she says, by the time I left your office, I was feeling, it is not good to say, but I will, I was feeling powerful, but in a feminine way. You know, like, I don't know how to explain, as it's difficult even in Greek for me. But I was feeling like mother for a lot of people. And even then, that we had difficult stuff, the crisis and Grexit and all of that stuff. I was so powerful and I was feeling, okay, I know we're going to make it, not only in Greece, but as a humanity. She goes on, I was full of joy. I went into the water and I felt a lot of blue hands all around me, healers, as if a lot of people were around me, healers touching me. It was that kind of swimming pool. It was rectangular. And I did all the healing, and opposite there was a man. And I came out of the pool and dressed him in red clothes. And I left and walked around. I saw a woman, her back. She was standing by the seaside, and I could smell the sea. I could feel the sea. And probably I became the woman, I don't know, but by the time I saw the sea, I was into it again, and I went again to the bath. I returned. I gave a shield to the man who was much bigger than me. In session 4, PD felt as though something was pushing her down onto the bed, whilst an angelic being carried her towards a temple. Once she reached the temple, she lost her physical form and became like the wind, however retaining consciousness. She witnessed a scene where a priestess relinquished her daughter to someone or something. Although the priestess believed this was a sacrifice, PD knew that it was not, and she felt angry. She watched as the daughter moved down from level to level until she was in a cave, where she gathered strength to emerge again towards the light as a plant. I saw the girl as the seed in the cave womb preparing, and then with a lot of strength or dynamism, shot forth as a stem. And then when she got to the surface, there was unity. The seed budded by itself without any help. Here was darkness around the girl, and it was as though her own strength led to the change. By the time she came up to the earth, I was a part of the universe as well. I was no longer the wind. I became and experienced enlightenment. Everything was one there. It was very powerful. We move on to the next participant. Obviously, because we don't have time available, I have tried to do it with just 4 participants in order that I can share their voice. It was as though there were 2 parts, a dead world on the left and a dead world on the right, but as though it was alive with this girl who was enormous, trying to come alive and pulling out. Something was holding me down, and then it was as though something was pulling me up. And then I could understand the beginning of the world. There was knowledge. Her epiphanies were being different, death, and reading about her mother wanting to commit suicide. She felt that the music awakened the feeling of nature, metal, and rocks, and my voice was like a mother singing melodiously. She was the 7th child of 20 children. Her dreams were being hit on the head and dying. The ethereal and physical must unite. People living in a community unharmoniously, making fire with chemicals, breaking eyeglasses, a bridge and a church, fire, cigarettes, and alcohol. Even though some of the participants, in fact, quite a few of them, felt that they were being pushed down on the bed or that they couldn't move, they didn't feel any fear, I have to say that. And during the time that they had their dreams, I did ask them if they felt any fear, and the answer was no. So in session 1, there was birth, midwife, mother, father, spiral, a blue woman, and light. Session 2, a temple and etheric figures, blue figures, milk coming out of breasts, freedom. The cotton baby clothes in session 3, standing in Delphi, a woman in black. And session 4, huge marble woman. One of the sides of the body is different, and there was a waterfall in session 5. So in the first week, PL reported dreaming that she was in the water with 2 men and 2 women who were guardians or protectors. One of the men killed her by hitting her on the head with a big stone. Although dead, PL saw herself standing up. I was then standing up with a daisy in my hands. There was a very big tray with a sun carved into it, a sun, a moon, and a biblical figure. When I tried to move towards it, I was told to leave the area. Then the men and the women put a very thin, iridescent gown on me. They turned me round clockwise and anti-clockwise, and then I woke up. In session 2, PL saw Demeter high up and Persephone on the earth, both trying desperately to reach the other. She described the energies as energies of darkness and light in conflict with each other, struggling to unite. PL had difficulty in relaxing and felt on edge, especially as she did not speak English and could not understand what I was reading. I encouraged her to let go and try to allow the process to unfold when suddenly she started crying. Your voice has a melodious sense about it, as though you are a mother singing to her child, and the music awakens the feeling of nature, metal, rocks, and which are inside of me, and it's deep. So it is like a mother who is singing melodiously, and there is the flock of animals and all the places of nature that brings a feeling of intense stillness and depth to me. Maybe it's because I never had this. I never recall my mother having rocked me and sung to me. And maybe this is what it is. Maybe it's why. I'm sorry, it's not pain, it's a memory. The following day in her meditation, she saw herself as an older woman and a younger girl in Delphi, holding a broken tower. I saw myself at Delphi, dressed in white, standing with a jar in front of a small stone wall with a kerchief on my head. I saw an older woman dressed in black, and I understood that I was the young girl and I was the older woman too, and that I was holding a broken tower. The tower is like the tarot card of the tower that I have in some cards. Demeter is holding the tower in the cards. It's the number 16. I saw the A again as though it was a big sign that was light and then dark, and I saw the Greek letter L. I felt hot, as though I was burning lava. I still feel heat in my body, even though it was cool, and I saw another A. Her dream the evening after the meditation had her attending a seminar where she was the flame in a lamp. She discovered communities of people living inside of her and realized that they were not living in harmony, and she became aware of two men, one with who she felt she should be in mystical communication with. She became a swan, but the man remained tied up as a lamp flame. In her next dream, she was taught by a young girl how to make a fire without getting burned. There were a number of follow-up dreams that ended with a dream where she was being attacked by two men. One was wearing glasses that she broke, and when the glasses reappeared, she broke them again. I just want to say something here that this participant did have a lot of experiences. However, having discovered, let's say, Schwartz's work with internal family systems, what I presume happened is that the different communities of people living inside of her were some of the subpersonalities that emerged. And every person that she saw were aspects of herself. And the wearing of the glasses was quite symbolic because they broke. And so she had to shift the way of thinking in general. In session 4, PL saw a number of mountains in fog, ancient temples that had been destroyed, a river that had run dry, and a huge marble woman struggling to get up. On the right side, there was a huge marble woman, and it was like she was buried in the ground. She was very beautiful, and she was trying to get up. She needed a kiss to awaken, and there was an eye that opened in the sky, and there were clouds and shapes that touched the girl. There in the distance was the eye that looked. It was rainbow light, and the eye began to pull her and to send light, and she gave and took the energy, and she pulled out of the earth. She came to life again, but it was like she did not get up. PL felt her right side much heavier and larger and experienced the eye as a sense of having lived the beginning of the world. It was as though there were two parts of a dead world on the left and a dead world on the right, but as though it was alive with this girl who was enormous, trying to come alive and pulling out. Something was holding me down, and then it was as though something was pulling me up, and that I could understand the beginning of the world. There was knowledge. PF, I want to see this Medusa inside of me. I don't want to lose her. I want to recreate her, not remove her. I believe in people's evolution, otherwise there is no point if we do not evolve. But I want my own nucleus inside of me to know how I am evolving without having to throw parts of me away. Her dreams were saving a child, leaving school and finding a library, being cleansed with mud on a beach, a pregnant fat woman, taking a pill to become someone else, the shadow girl called Medusa, and a car accident and arguing with a man. So in session 1, she went to the sea. There was up and down movement, images, a priestess in the temple. Session 2 was moving out of a hole onto a balcony, flying and watching the self in the mirror, realizing that sometimes I am Medusa, sometimes I am Hermes, playing his lyre. Session 3 was a woman like a tree that becomes the sail of a boat. Session 4, the deepest journey, the temple and the girl. And session 5, I can't actually see, so I'm going to move on. In session 4, Pia found herself in a temple like a Parthenon on a hill. She saw herself as a young girl wearing white and playing in the temple between the columns, looking for the sunset. As she waited for the sun to set, she was in an orange-yellow space that changed tones and became deeper shades. There was a breeze that blew her dress and her hair, which had been plaited. PF tried to explain her experience. I have to tell you that I do not know towards the end where you are. I start in the beginning, but then I stop. I don't understand the music as music. I feel like I'm not in my body, like everything is happening parallel. I don't understand when you stop talking. It does not enter my consciousness. It is like everything becomes one. And I have a sound atmosphere that envelops me, an atmosphere of sounds that exist with me. I cannot understand it. PH says, I think I will meet the self and lose my weight, and these two parts will join up. This is the first time this is happening to me. I usually have done so many therapies, but I have never felt that I was healing like this. I am healing. And that is why I feel so good that I have this opportunity again to put things right, because I have been trying for 25 years. She had only one dream of a palace of glass that shatters, where she was no longer a man. In session 1, an ancient soldier, going back in time, nearing the sun and experiencing joy. Session 2, a baby, 12 women healing the baby. The mystery of Demeter is revealed. Session 3, yellow light, a woman planting seeds in her heart and stomach that changed into a flower and a plant. And in session 4, receiving light, baby, secret purple flower, fire, yellow light, green light, and union. Her epiphanies were becoming a light healer and feeling stronger after a long depression. In session 1, she experienced an ancient soldier bursting out of her chest and moving to the light and the sun. He went down to a beach where there was a young girl and a woman. She found that she was going back in time when she was an embryo, then to memories of her father holding her as a baby, and reflected on how many years had been missed as a soldier in battle. Prior to session 2, she reported that her sleeping habits had changed dramatically, as she was much more energized and not able to sleep at 9 p.m., as she was usually prone to, but she could only sleep after midnight. In session 2, she described a baby coming out of her chest that was surrounded by a group of 12 women who caressed it and took it to a higher realm where it began to grow. The sexless child met with the mystery of Demeter, and it grew to be a young person. PH was surprised there was so much joy, happiness, and light that surrounded the young person, and felt as though she had been flying. Prior to session 3, she shared feelings of being reprogrammed, needing even less sleep and feeling energized and much happier with life. In session 3, she experienced a heart opening and a river of darkness flowing out. Her stomach was healed, and a woman planted a seed in her belly and heart. I'm going to move on. In the follow-up session, PD shared that a cycle had closed and that she had decided to further her studies as she was not happy at work, and that the sessions had energized her and had given her back power that she had lost. PL said that she believed that the process of healing that had been initiated was ongoing, and that she was convinced that this ongoing process was not only personal, but collective as well. She suggested that what had been lost and damaged during the ransacking of the Eleusinian temple was being healed through the study. I have to say that PL was quite versed with esoteric teaching. In her follow-up session, PF shared that her feelings of anger had abated considerably and that she and her boyfriend were getting married. She asked if she could continue therapy cleansing because she was planning on starting a family and did not want her baby to inherit her insecurities, fears, and blocks. PH called to inform me that she had finally taken the decision to have stomach reduction surgery, something that she'd always been afraid of doing. She was losing weight and becoming a new person inside and out. So, the Demetrian Persephonian journey comes with the acceptance of the call. The surrender is both to a personal and a collective, because I do not believe any longer that we are just here for our personal growth, but as we grow, so does the collective, and so does it evolve. The challenge is to surrender to the great work, which is inner work. It's becoming queen and king of the shadowlands, which is the shadow aspects of the unconscious and everything that we have as core beliefs. Mentorship is to accept that there are archetypes within as well as without, guides, etc., and surrendering to the highest potential and possibility. The intention is to transform and to evolve, and there are ending cycles and the beginning of new cycles. So the conclusion that we come to is that there is a sacred path, and the desire for truth as to who we are and why we are here needs a clear intention to find our purpose in life. Yes, we need theory, but we also need practice as well. There needs to be a balance between both. And I think that this has come in general through the philosophers and the poets. If we go back into ancient Greece, we have the three fields of probability in the now, the probability that I will behave in a certain way due to my conditioning from my childhood, the possibility that I have to heal the wounds within me and to move into the field of possibility, and then the potential to change the way in which I think and to actually have a change in the neurochemistry of my brain at the moment that I am reinventing my life and seeing what I learned through the different painful experiences that I have had, because we are on the everlasting journey of the soul to learn, to understand that there is a greater meaning, to remember it, and to fulfill its destiny. So my adaptation through the cards have come to see, and through the help of my participants who I consider as co-researchers, that Persephone and Demeter is one. We mother the inner child. We need to come into contact with the different aspects of self, or the different exiles, as Schwartz names them in IFS, to find innocence, to then understand that there is the sacred flower, whether we call it the self, the soul, or the soul self, whatever word suits us. There is a divine element within, and our balance comes through the middle world, which is facing life on earth, but understanding that there is this greater aspect of unity to be found and understood. The answers are within. There are two inner natures, the anima and the animus, which is the sacred marriage, and the unconscious, which has its biographical and transpersonal archetypal figures. This picture here is one that I really appreciate, because the goddess is still in her sleeping position, and she recognizes, or there is a breaking of the need of whatever she carries within, whether it comes from transgenerational wounding, from ancestors, from past lives, if people believe in them, from wherever, even from a cultural collective aspect. These need to be healed for us to grow and become more whole. So, are there any questions and comments? I've gone a little bit faster because I do want to hear your voice, and I don't want to be speaking only in terms of your thoughts and how you took this. And I just wanted to say that in preparation for the next journal, you may reflect, draw, dream journal, look at emerging perspectives, a commitment to self-knowledge, nothing in excess. I'm going to stop sharing now. And hopefully we can dialogue now in terms of what you thought. Did it stir